So back to today's program. Welcome all the audience again. As I mentioned before, I'm Daniel, the co-founder of CyX. We are building Routino, the VR-powered cyber awareness platform. Our mission, as Mr. Ambassador said, is to build bridges between the technology and people. And this event today serves this purpose as well. The embassy and us would like to have the cybersecurity community across the borders to share relevant information and at the same time to raise awareness of users, next generation experts. That's why we organized these 4 panel discussions on the hottest topics in cybersecurity. All the panels begin with 10 or 15-minute kickoff remarks of distinguished experts, where panelists will share their experience. Once these remarks are delivered, we jump into discussing the topics more in detail in the Q&A section. During the whole event, every question from the audience is warmly welcome. We encourage you to comment and ask your questions in the comment section next to the YouTube video on the right. Me and the team of the organizers will follow them and do our best to incorporate them in the conversations. Please note that even though this video is not publicly available, anyone with the link can view it. In the first panel, we will talk about strategic level incident management, and right after that we will discuss a cyber diplomacy related topic, the role of the NATO and the EU in this field. After the lunch break, we will talk about cyber awareness for public administration and a bit more general. And in the last panel, we will discuss how to reach out to the next cybersecurity generation. We wanted this panel as relevant as it can be, so we asked a really fresh cybersecurity professional, Bianca, to moderate it. Before I introduce the first panelist, I would like to say thanks to the ISACA Budapest chapter who provides CPE points to the audience. We will paste the special ISACA link into the chat session, so those who need can find it easily. Also thanks to the European Union's Erasmus Plus program for their support. Last but not least, of course, let me assure everyone that all panelists represent their own views and they do not represent the EU. And now, as everything is clear, I guess I can introduce our very first panelist. First of all, Gabor Illes, who is a business development partner at Balasys. He is an expert of preventive cybersecurity incident management, for example, API security. The next speaker is Sandor Feher, founder and CEO of Whitehat IT Security. They are managed cybersecurity service provider, but they also have a number of on-demand ITS services, including expert incident response, during which they have seen many strange and incident cases. After Sandor, let me introduce Kieren Nicolas Lovell, who is a cybersecurity specialist who specialized in incident response and real-time cybersecurity simulations. Right now, he is the head of CERT Special Handling at TalTech. Last but not least, welcome Ernő, the lead of HunCERT. Their main mission is to help the Hungarian internet providers with incident management. In the first panel, we will talk about strategic level vulnerabilities. Gabor, the stage is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the nice opening remarks for Mr. Ambassador as well. It was really great to hear that that within Europe it's clear that we have to work together to fight the cybercrime and to be more efficient in fighting these various challenges. So, as our topic here in this panel is the preventive cybersecurity, I would like to highlight a few key aspects of how to achieve prevention in this cyberspace, and what is there to be done to be effective in preventing or even detecting certain events or incidents in the cyberspace. And as Donny told, and we talked to the others as well about, I would like to highlight a few recent challenges which came to the cyber scene in the last couple of years. One of them is definitely the question of the APIs. As you all may know, that because of the PSD2 mainly, the API started to deliver much more valuable information recently than the weather forecasts and our Facebook data and the 9GAG feeds. Besides the financial data, there is also the medical data traveling through these APIs. And from the preventive point of view, what we have seen and what we have identified in this scene is that the monitoring part of these and the protective part of these APIs are not really were not really the focus of those who are using and publishing services through these various channels, that's certainly a problem. My point would be here is that regardless, when we talk about the PSD2 and the financial APIs or the medical APIs, those state actors or any malicious actors who are trying to penetrate into these valuable data feeds, so to say, on the side, they will have as side benefits access to various 0 days and other attack vectors, which they could use to penetrate other data streams, not only in the field of APIs, but in many other fields. And I believe the others, both Ernő and Sandor, I'm sure about that. We'll talk about the incident response part and how to prevent these incidents. But what do we need to enable the work of the companies like the White Hat? We need data, and my highlight would be here that the data collection to achieve a successful incident response and to achieve also prevention on the long run, we would need to have a proper data collection, and we would need to have all the data aggregated into a single solution, where we can clearly see that who was doing and what has been done throughout these channels. This brings us back to the strategic thinking, which is today's topic. That whenever we deploy a solution, regardless that's a financial, a medical API in this sense, or it's just a simple solution like an e-commerce solution where we deliver other type of data, we tend to forget that the basic log collection, which is really an old-fashioned story, and I know that it's not fancied in these days, and it's not fancied by the startups mostly, that they would need to have a proper log collection. But believe me, if you think about the cybersecurity strategy, you will recognize that without having a proper data collection in the really beginning, it is impossible to achieve any incident response or forensics activities, which will make it impossible to detect if there is anybody in our networks, or impossible to detect or prevent them coming back again if they were once there and they were stealing data. I would like to open here a discussion in the Q&A, and I would more than welcome anybody to join us in the Q&A and start this discussion about the importance of data collection in this part. And yeah, it's interesting to be in a panel where I have to give a keynote, but yeah, so my main idea here is, as you have already heard it, that when we think about the strategic level incident prevention, it's not closely attached to the actual prevention itself, but we have to start with the really basics, which means that we have to have relevant log data coming in from our systems. Most importantly, these are not those development debugging logs, what we usually tend to get from application developers. But I suggest to everyone that you should consult with cybersecurity experts whenever you develop your own application or even a simple web platform, to find what kind of data should be logged and what data should be collected in these terms. Because debugging logs are nice, and obviously it's needed by the developers, but usually the focus of the development and the development lifecycle is not on cybersecurity and not cybersecurity related data collection. And again, the next speakers could, I believe, confirm the fact that without having the proper data, it is really, really hard to achieve any kind of protection or prevention of cybersecurity incidents. So my closing thought here in this panel before the Q&A and before the other speeches is that please keep in mind on the strategic level, when you build any solution, whether it be an e-commerce solution, it's a fintech, it's a medical technology company, or even an agrotech, you should be in the first place thinking about cybersecurity on the strategic level. Cybersecurity is not a thing what you have to deal with when you have an incident. Firefighting is a good thing. We love to firefight, and there are many things which could not be prevented simply because of the nature of these attacks. And there has to be a team to do the firefighting. But if you include on the strategic thinking level cybersecurity, when you build up your own company, or when you are designing a service for other companies in the cybersecurity, I really want to suggest to every one of you that put a highlight on the data collection part, also when you think about APIs. The others will talk about the importance of trainings and incident response, so I don't want to go deep into that topic. And I hope you will enjoy today's panels and sessions. And thank you for the opportunity for the SciEx.
Thanks, Gabor. I will ask Sandor to share his experience about this firefights and incident management, also in the private sector. So, Sandor, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thanks for the warm and detailed introduction, Daniel. It's my pleasure to be here. White IT security focuses on the DACH and the CE region, so my experience came from that areas, but I don't think that would be great difference anywhere in the world. I would like to emphasize that all of my thoughts are my own, and which is not equal or equivalent with my company's opinion. That's just was for the lawyers around us. I'm pretty sure that you all know that the number of IT security incidents has been significantly rising during the COVID time. The introduction of limitless home office reached the companies in a really unprepared situation. Not just the workers, but the administrators and the infrastructure itself. There weren't enough mobile workstations, nor VPN connections, and the IT security awareness level of the teams was quite inhomogeneous. Not to mention that the users follow the tricks of the attackers more easily at the home environment than in a professional environment. I was asked by the organizers, by you guys, to give a 50-minute talks about incident management, which is not easy to fit in, but I will do my best. Incident management is divided into two categories. The first is pre-incident management, and the second is post-incident management. Today I will focus on the post-incident management because Gabor delivered a great keynote speech about the pre-incident management topic, and I totally agree with him. and not to mention that post-incident management is much more entertaining. But frankly speaking, I agree with Gabor that it is smarter decision to deploy fire sensors than do 24/7 fire fighting tasks. So post-incident management is a well-standardized process. For example, it is discussed within the ISO 27000 certified standard, and not to mention that it was updated recently, last year, which means it's quite fresh. Post-incident management process is divided into 6 different phases, which is detection, notification, triage, root cause analysis, response, and documentation. Yeah, documentation. Let me share my personal experience and some well-published story about these processes. There are 2 types of detections, internal and external one. In an ideal situation, the victim corporation is able to detect their own incident and they can react it quickly. Although, according to my experience, the victims are usually notified by external parties about their incident, and the attackers are able to remain hidden or invisible in the victim's network for about 6 to 9 months, which is quite long time, I guess. It is common that the victim is notified by an IT security or a threat intel company. I would say this is the most convenient situation for both parties, because these companies are usually quite discreet. A bit less convenient situation is when a governmental organization, governmental-like organization alerts the affected company, for example, some kind of authority. These organizations are also discreet, but the process is usually ends with a fine or a penalty, which is not really good, if you know what I mean. From a reputational aspect, the least convenient is when a customer or a partner or a competitor company alerts the victim. You know, competitors are keep watching each other, so that is why it could happen many times. That is why I always recommend to our clients that they must have both detection and prevention capabilities on site. Or if they don't, then they need to purchase that as a service, for example, in a form of a security as a service contract. For example, the service we provide called White Shark. I would like to highlight that the special attribution of the supply chain attacks. During the COVID ages, we all learned that we have to stay home if we are infected, and we have to, we need to warn our colleagues, friends, and relatives that we are infected. For example, if the supplier of Airbus had warned their partners immediately, and they wouldn't play hide and seek, then they would have stayed immune or be aware their penetration earlier. I mean the main company, Airbus. So external notification is a must, especially nowadays. Believe me, the information about your incident will sooner or later be publicly available. Nobody can avoid it. Early sharing is caring. When a company realizes its incident and an internal notification starts immediately, I know sometimes not immediately because of reasons, but when it starts, it's escalating fast from one level to another, and it will end somewhere around the C-level executives soon. They handle the situation. I mean, if they handle the situation well, then a straightforward external communication process will be started soon. If not, then, for example, an internal or illegal insider trade process can be started, as it happens within the infamous SolarWinds incident recently. The external notification process is best if it is as possible as, if it is as transparent as possible. Fortunately, there are some good examples for this, like the North Hydro incident with the NotPetya or the recent FireEye incident. They published everything they could. They also involved the authorities, and they also involved their customers in the case. In my opinion, this is the best possible communication or external notification strategy. Unfortunately, there are also some bad examples for the bad post-incident or external notification process, like it was within the Equifax incident. When the company delayed the notification of their customer for weeks, and later they redirected their users to a broken site, and the list is quite long in this case. That is a problem. When the incident responders start their triage phase, they have to make many hard decisions. The first, that will they choose the fast triage and they start the response phase a bit later, or choose a slow triage, which means they collect forensic evidence, which can take a lot of time and other resources, but later the evidence can be involved in some kind of legal process or procedure. Collecting forensic evidence from the cloud instance, it is also another hard question, and I don't want to deflect from the original topic. The main aspect of this, that in the middle of an incident, the victims usually want only one thing: immediate solution, not slow evidence gathering process and postponed reactions. So the incident responders do it in a fast way, but sometimes at the end of the incident management process, the customers would like to change their mind in case of the evidence gathering method, but at that time it is too late. So my advice in this question is to take the time and try to collect as much evidence as possible and start the next phase a bit later. In parallel with the last part of the triage phase, an observation phase is also in progress. In this process, the incident responders are looking for as many hidden persistent mechanisms of the adversaries as possible, and they do the same with the advanced lateral movement techniques. Without this, a proper incident management and a proper eradication, it's nearly impossible. It also takes time. Containment is also a crucial process. When the incident responders separate one subnetwork or site from another, it is an effective steps against the attackers, but it creates hard situation for the business and production, not to mention that not just the adversaries, but all the administrators. Moreover, the incident responders are also disconnected from that area. It means that the incident responders have to be on site, and if multiple sites are affected in different countries or sometimes in different continents, then you need a lot of incident responder or a rapid movement capability. We are not a big company, so with hundreds of incident responders, so we choose the second option. The eradication or the D-Day operation, as we call it, is fast if we prepare correctly with the previous mentioned steps. After the incident responders, after the successful eradication, we shift or transform into a 24/7 monitoring mode, just to be sure that the attackers were removed properly. It also takes time, but in this phase, the customers are usually satisfied and patient because the operation is being recovered. Nobody likes it, but incident responders have to close their job with a high-quality documentation. This will be essential for the customer to find who is responsible for the incident and hold them accountable. If the company has cybersecurity insurance, then an insurer company will also ask for the documentation, or it will be a basement of their later investigation. The last step is the short, medium, and long-term development plan, just to avoid that these incidents would have happened again, but that's another story. I think I talked more than I was supposed to. Sorry for that, and there is so much more in this subject. So let me give back the virtual podium to the organizers. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sandor, for the introduction of this method. And let's move to the governmental sector. Please, Kieren, introduce us the general situation in this sector and give us a short brief about the British and Estonian incident management as well. The stage is yours.
Thank you kindly, Daniel. So my name's Kieren Lovell. From the outset, I'll say I'm quite a strange person. So I originally was in the Royal Navy for 2 years on nuclear ballistic missile submarines. I then went over into mine warfare for 5 years. If in case you're interested, around Estonia and the Baltics, there's still 1 million unexploded mines. So if you see a spiky thing, don't kick it. And then in 2010, I moved over to the Royal Norwegian Navy and set up the Cyber Warfare Division for the frigate weapon. And then I became a Battle Watch Commander and Pirate Hunter in Somalia for 9 months and a Chief Information Security Officer for the deployed NATO forces there. I now work at Pembroke College at the University of Cambridge as a supervisor and a lecturer in incident response. Cranfield Defence University in the United Kingdom. I'm also at Census Septima as the Chief Operating Officer, and I work at TalTech in head of the special handling. So I think bringing it to the government sector and the strategic side is the first thing we kind of have to identify is our own industry is at fault. Cybersecurity, it doesn't really exist. Like it or not, no one cares, and they care about the impact. And this is kind of replicated throughout defense and with different areas. No one actually cares if they've got malware in the computer. They care about the impact of they've lost their email, or they've lost the ability to get access to their bank account, or they've lost money. And this has actually gone into defense because we have air, sea, land, space warfare, and now we've bolted onto the end of it, cyber warfare. The point is I've yet to find a computer that isn't in air, land, sea, or space. That's a computer in a vacuum that no one cares about. So not entirely sure why we push so much emphasis on this. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that we need to put it into context. So, for example, in terms of going down the cyber loop, we can get obsessed with looking at the data and not come up with the actual information we need from the data we've already got. So we already know in the UK, our biggest incidence at the moment is a 657% increase in spear phishing connected to COVID. People pretending that they've got COVID vaccines, or pretending that they've been alerted, or using the messages to get the free loans. It's still based around the human and based around how to infiltrate them. So I think from a strategic point of view, the first thing you've got to understand is one of the principles we teach in cybersecurity that we've stolen from defense. We actually need to say the whole sentence. And in one of the pillars for cybersecurity is need to know principle. The problem is that's actually not the principle in defense. It's need to know with a responsibility to share. So in one way, I understand that we need more data, but in reality, we actually just need to talk to each other and actually share to each other all of the information that we've got and put it into context. If I get attacked and I fall for a victim for something, I should tell others, and I should help others in my industry and connect them up. We don't do that because we don't want to admit that we made a mistake. We like to keep everything in our silos. We like to keep everything isolated. And this is not just between companies and companies or departments and departments. This is also internally. within your organization. Now, I work at a number of universities, and I can happily say one of the reasons I left defense and went into the university sector is to see how real psychological warfare is. But the separate isolations of different data pools without actually sharing to each other, that generally makes the incidents worse. So while there's a good emphasis on detection and more data collection, I would start with a primary objective from the strategic side of what do you actually hold? What data do you already have? And are you actually, who's responsible for it? Do you need it? I would start with the basics. Magic boxes are great, but nevertheless, they are magic boxes. They don't do everything that you need. Actually working out what you do, how you're doing it, and if you're doing it in the right way is far more important. Additionally, though, when we say prevention, we need to be kind of key in what we're talking about. We can prevent drive-bys. We can prevent somebody that looks and there's an open door. We cannot prevent someone that's dedicated to get into your system. That's no-go. And the way I like to describe it is give me a state-level actor anytime over a really annoyed ex-girlfriend or boyfriend. They are determined. They will spend the human amount of time to try and get into the account because they're dedicated, focused, and they have only one objective, to get in. If that person is dedicated and really wants to get that data or cause reputational damage, we're not going to be able to protect against that. They will get in. So where I would say that on the strategic side, where we need to focus on is actually practice what happens when it goes wrong, really wrong. Not just somebody's had a hack, but somebody is really targeting you and exploiting it. Do you know who to contact? Do you know who takes charge? Do you know who would make the strategic decision? Do you know how to log and make sure everything is done in a correct way? So when you go to court, you can submit the evidence and make sure that you've done everything in a forensically sound way. Can you back up why you made that decision and how you made it and why you made it? Did you put the users first? Within our industry, we still have a habit of focusing outside, detecting who's hacking us, detecting who's trying to break in and all of the noise, rather than actually remembering what our entire purpose is. We are here to protect users. So are we protecting their data? Do we know that we've got their data? Do we need their data? Do we ethically need to keep it for the amount of time that we've got? It's a lot harder to hack a database if I've deleted it. If it's not needed anymore, it's harder. So, of course, I'm not saying we don't look outside, but more importantly, we should look inside, know exactly what we're running, how, why we need it, what we're doing with it, but also when something goes wrong, even minor stuff, we should share with our friends and we should share in partners and not be worried about the finger pointing. If it's happened to us, it's definitely happened to somebody else. What we can do is if we all share in this way, we can actually hopefully protect the entire industry or sector or country in a far better way than just hoping and keeping everything within our silo and doing this to make sure that, you know, it's all good. We won't tell anybody that it happened to us because it's embarrassing. And on the last and final point, it needs to be the whole organization. Everybody needs to buy in and they need to make sure that they are not being persecuted. It's very common for us to do death by policy, and we will say that there's an amazing policy on there. For those that are on the YouTube comments, it's always interesting to see how many people have actually read their information security policy in their organization. I did this in the Microsoft conference last year. Of 600 people in cybersecurity, only 2 people put their hand up, and those were the 2 people that wrote it. It's a policy that we use to hit people after they violated it. It doesn't protect you. The culture shift is what's more important. So once we bring it into the aspect of everybody understands that it's their role, it isn't cybersecurity, it's security for the organization. Everybody has to contribute. Everybody has a part, and that you will not be blamed or victim blamed when somebody gets it wrong. That victim blaming makes most incidents go from minor to major. We know the theory, it's called labeling theory. If you call somebody an idiot, they will comply and they will become an idiot. Make sure you don't start that feedback loop from your third party, from third line support, from everywhere. When somebody goes wrong, or they click a link, or they do a mistake on the system administrator, it's not straight to the blame game. It's to support and infuse and make sure everything's positive, so they don't start going down that loop. So that's just an overview from there. So what's my biggest advice? Well, make sure that cyber is integrated within the whole security of your organization, and it's integrated within the strategy. What is your organization's aim? What are your priorities, and what are you trying to protect? What is in your information assets? What do you actually do as a company? Do you know who has access to what? Look at yourself first before we start pushing and hoping that it's hackers and it's all their fault, because most of the time it's on our it's on our network, and we need to look after it. We should treat users' data like we are borrowing their car. You want to make sure that you return it safely and it's not dented and smashed.
Okay, thank you, Kieren, your words. I would like to ask Ernő to share his thoughts about the Hungarian CERT and incident response. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. It is always hard to be the last presenter in this area, because there are a lot of common thoughts that are shared by the previous presenters, and I've prepared a presentation, but I'm not going to use it because I would repeat a lot of things. So now I'm just focusing on differences or additional ideas that came to my mind, or while I was preparing. I was trying to emphasize several parts that's not been present here as of yet. First, let me introduce myself or activities in a short period of time, because we are different in several ways from the previous presenters. We are a team of security, let's say, experts who are developing different solutions and researching different aspects of security. And by this time, while we are doing this, we were recognizing the need for some activities in our nation or in Hungary. It was more than 15 years ago when we started these activities, and that was a time where cybercrime or the word cyber at all did not mean anything. Or it was a completely different thing. It was a thing from sci-fi movies or so. We are dealing with large companies, and we are dealing with small and medium enterprises. We are dealing with startups who are trying to get their foot in the field of IT all the time, and they are not our clients. We are trying to serve them, but they are not buying our services. We are just trying to help the overall picture, to say, and these results in different additional properties of our activities. For example, we cannot do the standardized cycle of incident management and response, because we have no legal permits to deal with our clients' internal networks or systems. We are just trying to communicate. We are just trying to help them. And from these experiences, I've derived some additional thoughts. For example, I agree with the need of information sharing, but I also believe that there are situations when we have too much information. And it is also true in cybersecurity. We have a lot of public organizations or private organizations who are running automated services that are sending out emails and alerts to each and every entity that is seemingly attacking them, telling that, oh, you shall take a look at your web server, your SSH host, or some additional devices because they are attacking us. And in fact, these are the information. These are the letters we are receiving most of the time. The quality and the quantity of information is not homogeneous, to say. So we have a lot of information, and we have quite a few cases, or only a handful of cases when we can act on an information, an external alert that we have received. The most important part of the communication is still missing, and I believe from the strategic point of view, there are a lot of motivational aspects to these. As it's been said earlier, we are trying to get the problems stay inside the gates of our organization, and it is always nice to hear that sharing is caring, and you shall provide information to external parties. But in practice, I believe that there are basically two reasons behind not sharing information. One of the reasons would be that we do not have the information to share, and we are dealing with this case especially with small and medium enterprises, small startups and organizations, where they do not have the resources to set up a security framework to deal with their internal workers and do trainings on security or write policies at all. I'm talking about firms with 2 or 3 people, young developers who are trying to change the world, who are trying to introduce a new idea. And if they are not trained, if they are not conscious by their nature, they do not have the resources to deal with the problems that can arise. And being a small enterprise in the era of internet does not mean that your footprint is also small. You could do a lot with a lot of people, a lot of information. You can transfer data from one point to another in tremendous amounts, and I believe that is one of the reasons behind widespread incidents. It is not only always the nation state actors and the large suppliers and the security companies who are getting compromised. No, the small ones are also getting compromised, but they do not know. They do not even know about it, and it is quite hard to get information and quite hard to reach out to the operator responsible for a hacked server if that server is running an application developed by a small company. They might not even know who is responsible for a specific service. So my experiences are a bit more minimalistic in the way that when we are talking about the clients or the companies who are interested in the services such as log analysis or log collection or incident response services, they are already a bit more conscious than or most of our clients or most of the companies who are operating in our area of constituency. This would be one group of my thoughts, and the other thing that I would like to mention in my time, that I also sense a set of panic buying or panic migrations in especially in the field of companies who are not prepared for COVID, and we can see a lot of small companies that they are migrating to cloud-based services, and they are using all the possible integrations, all the fancy things that are there, and they try to get it cheap. And the combination of using everything on the cloud and try to get it cheap results in a lack of security functions usually. So when you are using a free tier cloud service, one of the things that you will be missing is identity management or user management or second factor authentication. The other thing that you will be missing is logging, detailed logging or log analysis, because those are premium features. You wouldn't have to pay for those. And if you are a small company, you might not even have the money for paying that. But if you were following my previous thoughts, you might not even think about the need of getting those functions, because you were not using them when you were self-hosting your services at your office, and now why should you use those services when you are migrating to the cloud? And the problem with this is also that they will get logged in to those services. They won't be able to migrate back, and they won't be motivated to migrate back. And I expect these things to result in an increased number of policy violations, or if they even have a policy. But if they do not have a policy, they will have quite a number of security issues, because unknown users would be invited to their organization. They cloud tenants, they would leave shared documents in the public and so on. So this is the second set of problems that I would try to shed light on. And I believe it is better for me to stop talking, because it is almost time to get to the question and answers part. So thank you for your attention and listening to my rambles.
Thank you, Ernő. Thank you, all of you, the thought-provoking insights. I would like to jump into the strategic level cyber vulnerabilities topics more detailed. But before I ask my first question, let me introduce our surprise guest, Fraser from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre Incident Management Team. Fraser, welcome in the virtual stage. First, I would like to ask you if there are any comments or additional information that you would like to add to the previous topics. Maybe you could also tell us a few words about what NCSC is, what it does, and more especially some backgrounds about the incident management team. Stage is yours.
Fantastic. Thanks, Danny. I don't think I've ever been referred to as a surprise guest before, so I will wear that title with honor. Thank you. So yeah, let me introduce myself. I'm Fraser. I'm from the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre's Incident Management Team. Broadly speaking, we are here to deal with the most serious incidents affecting the most important institutions in the UK across the public and private sector. So I've just been listening to the fascinating offerings from the panel there, and thinking about how we do crisis management within the NCSC. and also specifically thinking about the topic of learning lessons from those sort of strategic level incidents. So what I've been doing throughout those various different contributions is furiously taking a few notes, and I thought I'd just offer a few reflections before we get into the Q&A proper. So I think I've got 5. It should just take me a couple of minutes to get through these. So first up, situational awareness. It was a repeat theme that came up across 2 or 3 of the talks there. And I think at risk of me sort of stating the blatantly obvious, it's key. No stakeholder is going to be complaining about receiving too many situational updates in my experience. And it's important to recognise, and I think one of the panelists touched on this, that it's unlikely that you'll be dealing with a crisis that others can't contribute to in some way. So foremost in our consideration when we're responding to a new incident is thinking about our industry partners and our international partners, and trying to work out who's likely to have some form of experience that we can bring to bear. Getting the right information to the right recipients at the right time, I think, is half the battle, really. Whether that be a sort of policy maker within a government department to inform a particular decision being made, or a network defender and passing them IOCs in order to make sort of swift implementation. The second theme that I thought I would tease out is around about being honest about the limits of your own knowledge and your ability to influence the situation. So this is unfortunately a very ambiguous space that we all operate in. It's inherently quite confusing. Often we're dealing with emerging situations, and the sort of information gap is just something that will endure. We're never going to get completely rid of it. So I think following a sort of breaking incident, it's reasonable and preferable really to notify stakeholders early on about the limits of your knowledge, what you don't know, and basically setting out a plan for when you can expect to update them, rather than sort of leaving information in a vacuum, sort of acknowledging that there will be an information deficit and putting together a sort of plan for resolving that. And I think related to that, trust in this space can be very fragile. Particularly when it comes to victim engagement. Often we're dealing with very sensitive cases, and I think the institutional sort of inertia and nervousness around about responding to that is another theme that a few of the panelists referred to. So it takes an awful lot of time to build rapport, but unfortunately it's only one misplaced foot to lose it, so we need to be very mindful of that. The third theme I sort of drew out from the previous comments was about investing in your preparedness. So exercising is something that we take incredibly seriously. Within the incident management team, we have an exercising function that are there to do exclusively just that. And I think my experience is that rather than doing sort of large set piece exercises, which are incredibly immersive and there's a risk of everyone being overwhelmed, I prefer sort of discrete regular drilling just to make sure that all of the participants who will be involved in an incident response understand the expectations on them. But also, I think it's worth thinking about other disciplines outside of cybersecurity who are involved in crisis management and thinking about the sort of lessons that they can teach us and best practice that we can apply. So within government, I'm very interested in understanding other areas of national security and thinking about how they do crisis management. So counterterrorism, I think, is a really interesting space where over decades, very well-versed processes have been put in place. And actually, I think me and my team can sort of stand to benefit quite a lot from that. So thinking quite laterally about where there's other sort of areas of expertise and drawing that in is useful too. My penultimate point was going to be that whilst there is also a need to balance sort of adherence to agreed processes with a degree of operational adaptability. So in my experience, almost every incident has its own idiosyncrasies, and there's no point slavishly following a playbook on occasions where that doesn't feel applicable. So having the sort of confidence to give yourself a bit of latitude and deviate from those plans and get creative where necessary is quite important. And I think it's also worth having a plan in place in order to make use of offers of support and volunteers. So in particular, when really serious incidents happen, I've always been really heartened by the amount of people who will reach out with offers of support, whether that be sort of colleagues within my organization or bits of industry who want to help. They're there to sort of contribute. And just thinking about how you can make good use of that in advance, I think, is time well spent, because inevitably when you're dealing with a crisis, you want to have given this some forethought and be able to think about how you can draw them in to support you. And then finally, given one of the themes we're interested in this session is around about lessons learned, that's something that we take incredibly seriously. But I think from my experience, looking to debrief and capture lessons learned throughout the entire incident's life cycle is an incredibly useful thing to do. Traditionally, I think lessons learned are often captured at the end of an incident. But what you'll recall at the end of a particularly grueling incident response is likely to be prejudiced towards that latter stages. So having sort of very quick debriefs throughout the cycle of an incident, including at the very beginning, just to kind of capture what's gone well and what's not, is very useful and will often shed quite a lot of light on the parts of the process you may miss if you were just to focus on capturing those incident lessons at the end. Danny, I think I'll leave my opening remarks there. Thank you.
Thank you as well. So, gentlemen, let me start with the first question, connecting a bit of Fraser's words. But first of all, I would like to say to the audience, if they have questions, they can write into the YouTube comment section, and we're trying to answer them. So we come from the public and the government sector, and I'm really interested in your thoughts about responsibilities. We are living in a fully digitized, complex world. Lots of systems have an effect on others, and sometimes there isn't a clear border between governmental and public systems. What do you think is the responsibility of the company and the state in major incidents like Black Energy, WannaCry, Sunburst, that has an effect on the citizens? So for example, if it's an effect to my grandma, who will tell her what's happening, what's the level of it? Is it the state itself who should respond? Is it the company who had been attacked? So it's a really open question for everyone.
I believe this issue would be escalated. So first it would be the company who needs to react, and if the public sees that reaction is not sufficient, then it might be designated for a higher level authority. So that would be my basic train of thought, and I believe that is matching the current practice in most countries. So usually the government is not dealing with all the specific incidents until it is clearly of public interest. So that is my thought on this. And about the responsibility, of course, everyone is responsible, but it is not that clearly defined in most cases, I believe.
To be fair, there's kind of another problem as well, and I know already know that HunCERT and NCSC will have the same thing as me. I always like to say I'm an incident responder, but in reality, I spend 90% of my time as a telephone exchange or trying to find somebody's email address in order to actually contact the person. The amount of stocks as a service that actually have no contact details for me to actually contact them. I might use their abuse at address, but no one ever reads it. There's no PGP keys. So in a lot of the cases, it's escalated up to government level because there's no actual way for me to contact them. It's impossible. So when I could have contacted them when it was a minor incident, it becomes major because it's been abandoned for 2 days. So if there's one thing I would say for any startup or multinational company, please, RFC 2350 or security.txt, give me an ability to actually contact you directly to your security team with a PGP key. rather than doing what I had to do yesterday, which is be on hold for 2 hours on a telephone, desperately trying to get hold of somebody in security. Most of the time, the reason that an incident goes from minor to major is time, basically, how long it's been left and abandoned. The quicker I can get hold of you, the quicker somebody can get hold of you, the quicker you can deal with it. I always like to use the analogy from the Royal Navy. We learnt in the Falklands War that if you turn up to a fire on board a ship with a fire extinguisher within 30 seconds, the fire is out. If you've longer than 30 seconds, you've lost the ship. It was simple as that in terms of the equation. It's the same with cyber. It would be like trying to Google the telephone number for 999. It's a lot easier that we all know the number and we know who to contact. If organizations, big and small, just have the ability to say who I need to contact, what's your telephone number, what's your email address, security.text or RFC 2350, lovely little format, costs you nothing, put it on your website.
Kieren, you are absolutely right. We experience the same. When we meet with a vulnerable company resource or a vulnerable computer or server which is used by adversaries, we always lose a lot of time to keep contact the owner of that proper resource. And sometimes, or I would say many times, the only way which is work 100% properly is to send a DHL mail, a classic mail to a CEO or a management, because it will be delivered to a proper person and the proper reaction will be started soon.
There's something quite reassuring and disheartening about the fact that we all recognize this as a problem, I think, really. Danny, I really like the premise of your question, which was around about how an incident like that would affect the individual citizen, which is something that my organization in the UK has put an awful lot of stock in recently. And I agree with sort of Ernő's sort of approach around about escalation effectively. So I think, unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to kind of deal with each and every incident affecting the UK. We need to kind of sort of get involved in the most serious ones. Something of the magnitude that you were sort of sketching out earlier on, Danny, I think absolutely would come into our sort of area. And I think the responsibility is shared both between the victim organisation and government. So the victim organisation, a degree of transparency around about what's happened to give people the sort of the understanding and comprehension of the incident is very important. And equally, where government, I think, has a responsibility is in articulating what that means for the individual citizen, and as much as possible, offering sort of clear, compelling, straightforward advice and guidance on what they can do to protect themselves. So, for example, after a data breach, sort of offering very specific advice around about the sorts of things they can do to protect their information and prevent, for example, secondary fraud, those sorts of things occurring.
Okay, thanks. My last question is, if there is a serious attack, and maybe it goes for Sandor, this question, because they do daily, as a daily job, incident response. So if company is attacked, which maybe has an effect to citizens, but they don't want to communicate previously, you have a really, as I know well, you have a really interesting service that maybe a lot of people just don't think about if this is a possibility, how to react and how court the time of the reaction. So if you can tell how you jump to the air and how you can react in an incident, that would be interesting, I guess, for the whole audience.
Oh, I catch. Okay, so I think I mentioned during my speech that if a company, a big company, really big company, is affected in an incident with multiple sites, with multiple countries, for example, and the incident responders do the separation job that could be really hard. I mean, there are only two options: to hire as many incident responders as you can and send them on site, or you establish rapid movement capacity or capability. And we choose the second option. That's why we had on our disposal a private helicopter to being able to move rapidly within these multiple sites. It's not a science fiction. I mean, it's a rather available option for anybody, I guess, in 2021. So yeah, we use this way.
Yeah, maybe it's available, but it's maybe a lot of people think it's just a movie. Okay, back to little for the previous topic. You told it was the responsibility of the state, of the company. Do we as cybersecurity professionals also have responsibility, like external experts? So for example, when a huge worldwide campaign happened, we as individuals, should we inform the whole world? I mean, should I tell my grandma that what's happening? And if yes, how should I do? And maybe not just for my grandma, but what's the audience that we should focus on and what we should tell them? Because probably they have no idea what we want to tell them.
What are you trying to achieve by telling them the truth? And they might not be prepared at all. Even they might know that they need to know the truth about cybersecurity. So could you please a bit elaborate on your question?
Yeah. Okay, let's jump for an exact topic. So for example, like smart measuring, it starts to be more and more common, or at least few companies started to provide such a solution. And normal citizens who use these devices, or they have just a smartphone at home, and there is an effect of them. There is a concrete incident that is has an effect to these citizens. We as professionals should stay and tell them what's happening, or they should know anything about it, but at least there is a little effect. So maybe they are in a botnet or whatever.
I think you have read the Blackout, the book titled Blackout, right? So this is the smart metering and measuring, and if we should tell the people that some things are happening which are affecting their lives. I think it's always an interesting question, but I believe if there would be a right informational flow towards those who have no information or no technological background to understand what's actually happening, that could be to the benefit of everyone from the protective aspect as well. But first we should start. I always give this example that my mother was freaking out that when she worked at a big company that she has to change her password like every second week, and she was wishing the IT guys all the worst she could because it's a nightmare to change the password. And I explained to her that it's not just the habit of the IT guys to make your life miserable by forcing you to change the password. Rather than it's protecting you, because when your laptop is stolen or lost and your password is weak, and they steal data from you, which belongs to the company, then you will be drawn to the court and faced with charges in front of the court, not the IT guys, because you are the one whose possession was lost or the data was leaked out, which is a sensitive data. And she started understanding that this is also for her goods to change the password and to use second password. So whenever you like those who do not understand much about the cybersecurity, understand that it's for their benefit, then I believe it could be a good strategy to communicate these to them.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there if I may. So I absolutely agree, Gabor. I think I would disentangle the two things there. So I think elevating, our aspiration as a community should be to elevate the citizens' understanding of cybersecurity generally. And I think there's an awful lot of very good work underway globally in order to make that happen. On specific incidents, what I think we really ought to avoid is hyperbole and sort of unnecessarily spooking people. The best case scenario, I think, is we give people a proportionate understanding of a particular incident and accompany that with clear steps that they can take in order to protect themselves. And I think all too often, I'm sure we have all seen examples of incidents that have taken place, and the sort of coverage that has generated has probably been a bit disproportionate, and it will result in probably people disengaging. I think ultimately, they will feel frightened, they'll feel sort of concerned, they won't understand what they can personally do to protect themselves. So I think tipping that balance back and making sure that they have a sort of clear and accurate understanding and a sense of what they personally can do in order to protect themselves is where we ought to be getting.
Okay, great, thanks. I guess most of the audience and the speakers heard about Sunburst, and this is probably one of the biggest cyber attacks, cyber espionage activity. Everyone can think with what is it right now, and there are still lots of questions mark in the whole story, and we cannot be sure about the details. And I don't really want to go deep into the specific case. But we know it was a supply chain attack, and we see that these malicious activities are more common. I mean, the supply chain attacks. How do you see the future of these kind of attacks? What can be done to reduce third-party risks?
I already bought an SMD soldering station to make my own hardware to prevent these kind of things, but that's just the fun part. Yeah, I think we all know what you talk about, but this is not a newborn baby. And I believe this was kind of, I mean, not actually this one, but something like this to happen was expected. If we think back to to another scandal, and I don't want to use names, but you can all remember a hardware manufacturer based in California, whose hardware was compromised with a tiny integrated controller, which was able to leak data to supposedly state actor back in the old days. So we have seen these kind of supply chain attacks, and to identify an SMD-sized hardware component on a laptop or a server motherboard was not always an easy, and is still not always an easy job to do. Similar to this incident we talk about, to prevent these actions, and I've been working in industry control system security for a good 2.5 years now, and researching these parts. There, it's always a problem that without having a proper regulation or compliance and state regulations, companies will not spend and will money on, and will not pay attention on certain requirements, which would be the most essential to prevent future cyber attacks in a slowly moving industry like industrial control systems. But I don't want to go deep into these topics. Just wanted to give some idea bonbons to the others to react on, and I give the word to anybody else.
Using a suppliers instead of doing it by your own is always a risk. I mean, not just in cyberspace. Companies have to handle it. If they want to use suppliers, they have to handle it. I meet with a good routine within the DACH region in the automotive industry, that they has their own IT security audit mechanism, which is called VDR. And a few years ago, they forced all of their suppliers to do the same, to do really strict IT security audits. And being well audited has become a competitive advantage in this field. And I think more other industries have to implement something the same, something similar.
Please, anyone would like to add a few words? We have 5 minutes left. If no, I would just ask a more general questions. What do you think? What will 2021 give to us from the perspective of cybersecurity field? Of course, we are not wizards, but I think there are a few things what looks like that it will happen, or there are some kind of results that already came to you, maybe. I mean, all of you here. So in this last 5 minutes, I would be happy if you can share your thoughts about the future, maybe the close future, 2021.
Well, the one thing, unfortunately, I can be very clear on for 2021, which I wish I wasn't right on, is we're going to see a hell of a lot of spike on COVID-related scams. There's no doubt about it. There's already a last academic report from the European Union CERT is 657%. We've dealt with over 1,000 in terms of trying to get people to get vaccine bookings using the same process that the NHS as well as the Estonian authority use. Like it or not, our biggest fear at the moment collectively is COVID still. And that is the injection button that people are pushing in order to break into networks. So the one thing I would say is it's going to keep continuing. There's going to be new and exciting approaches on social engineering of how they are going to do this. And unfortunately, the people that they will be targeting will be the most vulnerable. So in terms of what was mentioned earlier in the talks of collecting the data, there will be no data. You are talking with people that are probably barely then use a computer to go on their Gmail account, and that's pretty much it. So in terms of spikes, there will be a lot of management of where we are going to have to deal with lots of vulnerable people that will be falling for victimization of scams, and unfortunately that's the prediction. The only thing we can do is pretty much tell them what's going on before the event. So actually clearly say that, if you do get this, however, it's still going to happen. We can prevent some of it, not all of it. And those that are the most at risk will be there. But while it's gone up 657% at the moment on the last recorded, I reckon it's going to easily hit 1,000, unfortunately.
Thanks. Does anyone has something to add for this? Maybe.
I would like to keep it optimistic. So it is a bad habit of security experts to always talk about bad things, and I believe that generally speaking, the overall consciousness on cybersecurity and related problems are raising. I expect this trend to continue. It might be even a bit faster because the related incidents are also appearing in the mainstream media and in the head of politicians. So I believe that we are on the right track. I do not think that the world is coming, or the cyber world is coming to an end, but we have to keep up our activities.
I admire your optimism.
Okay, gentlemen, I guess it was a really good word to the end of this panel session. I really appreciate your thoughts. Really thank you to be here with us. If you think, you can join us via the YouTube link. And thank you so much. Everything to you.